Can I ask you why you are taking an interest in Ukraine in the first place?
Well, I myself have a condition known as bipolar disorder, which was finally diagnosed I suppose I was in my 30s, but I'd had a very troubled childhood, building up into expulsions and then prison, and a very tormented and stressful time that I kind of overcame, but was always aware that I had this issue. And one of the things you have to remember is the mind-body parallel is quite useful. It's not absolute, but it is useful. And in the case of the body, you can have a chronic condition which you are born with, as I think my bipolar is, like diabetes type 1 or asthma or anything of that, or an allergy to celiac disease, an allergy to gluten, say. There's just something you're born with, and it can be triggered by getting the wrong thing. It gives you your asthma attack, and you might trigger your mental health illness. But then there is traumatic physical illness, which could be caused by a gunshot wound or a car crash or falling. It's serious and it's a trauma. And it's the same with mental health. There are all kinds of people who are not born with a mental health condition, but under traumatic circumstances, either in childhood or indeed war, where these happen to people who've never otherwise had to consider that their mind might lose its focus, its equanimity, its contentment, its peace, its reliability. All kinds of aspects of our minds become contingent and unhappy. And it's extraordinary to me that in Ukraine this is being talked about. When I went there for this conference, there was an openness, not complete. There were plenty of soldiers. I spoke to some boys who'd lost limbs and the joking or whatever, and when I asked them if they ever felt low about it, they just went, nah, like that. And then when the camera was off, they went up to me and said, of course. I cry, my mother cries, and I cry when I see her cry. It became so apparent that what was being fought for was much more than territory, or if it was a territory, it was a territory of the mind and the spirit, of a freedom and an openness and a desire to be able to talk openly. And talking about mental health is a very, very healthy, ironically, sign of that openness.
Do you get a sense that the Ukrainian government is doing more to help people going through difficult mental
Yes,
health conditions?
I do get a sense of that. There are a lot of professionals who wish it was more and who wish that it was pushed through the schools and education and TV, and that it was part of the general conversation of Ukraine. But it's only just happened in this country. In the last 15 or 20 years, have people started talking more and more about their mental health, about the mental health of their children, and about the mental health of the nation, if you like, and the urgency of the problem. So I think it will take time, and because there is this really strong issue with what you do for wounded soldiers from the front, wounded physically. I mean, the number of prosthetics around is thousands. It's unbelievable, and you see it wherever you go, as I suppose my grandparents' generation did after the First World War, just endless people with missing legs and limbs and so on. And the mental equivalent, the urgent case of what used to be called shell shock and is now PTSD, and various other names are given to that. And the ripple spread outwards, as I say, transgenerationally and across the nation. But the urgency, I suppose, is with those who have served on the front and are injured in the mind as well as in the body. But yeah, I mean, it was one of the things we discussed at the conference last year, was how the message gets through to schools, and it's taught in a way that isn't sort of panic-inducing, or that is open and allows people to talk freely. And you take the cruel jokes out of the playground if you can, but without being too starchy about it. If you know what I mean.
One comment about Zelenska. One thing which really struck me when I met her in Kyiv, and she talked about mental health. She talked about, for her, it was a journey of discovery too, to find out about it, and that she had been informed by experts in the area that actually stress and trauma, loss can turn into a strength, that it can, ironically, instead of making you weaker, make you stronger. And the way she said it was clear she was fastening onto this as perhaps some hope in this situation. Did you discuss with her?
Yes. I mean, the strongest part of my leg is the part that has knitted up from being broken. It is the healing, but it has to heal first to be a strength, if you know what I mean. It has to be confronted, and in some way, you must be helped or find a way of helping yourself to get to that stage where you are stronger. The Nietzschean phrase, what doesn't kill us only makes us stronger, is all very easy to say, but when you're in the depths of misery and despair through grief or the loss of a limb or whatever it might be, the loss of a child, for heaven's sake, I mean, all the different possibilities are so horrific. But she is right, and so one has to have that point of hope. And societies that deal with mental health are happier societies generally than ones that hide it away.
I know it for a fact, Stephen, that people affected by this war, they know you, they listen to you, they appreciate what you do. I've got a friend who really likes your audiobooks, Harry Potter.
Oh, right, yeah.
What would you say to people who are grieving, anxious, depressed? What would your message to them be? What do you think they should do to survive?
Well, if I could say something that allowed them to step out of that feeling, I would be the greatest mental health doctor who ever lived. The important thing I often say is, while it is true that a mental health condition and a mental health crisis can be immensely serious, it can lead to physical ill health. It can lead to reaching out for drugs and alcohol to try and, quell the storm in the head. It can lead to outbursts of violence. Your family can lose faith in you. It can be terribly serious. But also it is worth remembering that some of the finest and best people in the world, some of the greatest artists and creators and inventors, and indeed soldiers, leaders, Winston Churchill being one example, suffered from severe mental health crises in their lives. You can have this and be a great human being with a fulfilled life of love and hope. And think of it, if you can, as being like the weather, which is to say, it's real. When it's pouring with rain, it's no good saying, it isn't really raining. It is raining. But also, you didn't cause that rain. The rain isn't your fault. And you can be damn certain, even if you live in Manchester, that the rain will go away, that it may be sunny. Not tomorrow, not the day after. You won't make it sunny. There's nothing you can do to make the rain go away, except recognize that it's real and that it isn't your fault. It's not something that's a weakness in you. It's an external thing. It's a thing that's happening to you. And it will go away, and then it'll come back. You've got to be realistic about it. But if you can have that sort of attitude to it, then you start, as you do with terrible weather, to find ways of coping with it. Oh, it's going to come back. What's my mental umbrella for when it comes back, as it were? Those are, they're not answers, as I say. That the tears still roll, the body still trembles with unhappiness, and the people one loves are upset with one too. But it is a sort of way of beginning to cope, I think.